My name is Hans Voss. I'm the Executive Director of the Michigan Land Use Institute. Next week, I'll be 47 years old. And yeah, that's pretty big news. And my goal is before I die, I want to take a train to Ann Arbor. I want to walk down to the depot, get myself some lunch at the filling station, and head on a train going south. I want to look out the window. I want to see the towns of Cadillac, Kingsley, Mount Pleasant, Alma, and I want to roll into Ann Arbor and go out and see some music and see friends, and maybe shoot to Chicago or Detroit, or maybe to the East Coast or the West Coast, all by train. So my question, our question tonight that we're asking you is, do you want to go to Ann Arbor by train? That's great. But the thing is, I don't want to be an old man taking the train to Ann Arbor. And I don't know how long I really got on this planet. So what we're proposing from the Michigan Land Use Institute is to make that happen, regular rail service to Ann Arbor and the communities in between within 10 years. And tonight we're going to talk about that and why we think that's a reasonable possibility. You're going to hear from a speaker from Detroit about the story of how the business leadership in Detroit came together to think about what's the best thing to drive economic growth in the city of Detroit, and they chose light rail. You're going to hear from speakers from Ann Arbor who launched a campaign similar to what we're launching here tonight to connect Ann Arbor to Brighton to Howell, which is soon to be started. And you're going to hear why we think this 10-year goal is feasible. I want to make clear to you that the Michigan Land Use Institute has no authority whatsoever to make this happen. We are a nonprofit organization based a couple blocks down on Front Street with a strong idea that this is possible and the constituency of many hundreds of people who want to make this happen. But we believe that the support that we've seen throughout the region, through the state of Michigan and in this room, makes it entirely possible if we think about this as a campaign. I want to emphasize that a goal is possible when we can organize the support to make it possible, and we have tremendous support. The Michigan Department of Transportation has this registered in their statewide rail plan as a priority. We'll talk about that tonight. We probably have a person here from MDOT, Patty O'Donnell. I don't know if she's here. She's planning to be here. She's not here yet. Who's been a strong advocate for this on behalf of MDOT. Mitch Foster is the village manager in Kingsley, who's here tonight because Kingsley's excited about getting on this train. Senator Wayne Schmidt, I think, is in the house. Senator, are you here yet? Not yet. Well, if there he is. He's in the back. I just want to point out that Wayne Schmidt, when he was in the House, was a true champion of rail in Michigan. He introduced the legislation to allow federal funding to improve the Detroit to Chicago connection and was a real champion of the M1 Woodward light rail system that you'll hear about today in Detroit. The Michigan Land Use Institute is committed to doing everything we can to make this a reality. We know it's going to take an organized and persistent campaign, and what we're doing here tonight is launching that, is to invite this community to join together in a long-term campaign that's going to take a while to make sure that our elected officials realize that this region wants rail connection downstate and do everything we can to make that statewide campaign powerful and effective. It depends on you, and you're going to learn about specifically things you can do tonight to help make this happen. There are opportunities for your support, to voice your support, and we ask you to stay connected with us as we carry this forward because, again, our strength comes from you. And what we need is your vision and your commitment, and I'm really proud that we're launching this tonight, and I'm proud of the people who have gotten us here to this point. One of them is our next speaker, and his name is Kim Pontius. Kim is a man of great vision and persistence. He understands that rail is not only good for people and the environment, it's good for the economy, and he'll tell you about that. He's been a driving force behind getting us here tonight. He's also going to serve as the master of ceremonies. So with that, I thank you all for coming. Stay connected as we carry this forward. And here's my friend and colleague, Kim Pontius.
Well, thank you, Hans. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank MLUI for stoking the firebox to kind of keep a head of steam on this topic. I started in this topic about 7 years ago with the Grand Vision and the Transportation Network and the Rail Subcommittee. I also sat on the Rail Subcommittee for the Chamber of Commerce. Lots of meetings, lots of talk. This is the closest we've ever come to having a serious conversation about trying to reestablish rail service to Northwest Michigan. And I think without MLUI, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So thank you again for putting this on tonight. You know, it's funny, I didn't know about the Mad Men clip at the beginning and all that, but there's a little paragraph that I wanted to read to you tonight. It keeps coming back to me, it keeps haunting me. And if anybody's gone to a business course at a college and studied marketing, this is one of the first things that you'll learn about, which is from a Harvard Business Review article in 1960 written by Theodore Levitt called Marketing Myopia. And in that article he says, the railroads did not stop growing because the need for passenger and freight transportation declined. That grew. The railroads are in trouble today, not because that need was filled by others, meaning cars, trucks, airplanes, and even telephones, but because it was not filled by the railroads themselves. They let others take customers away from them because they assumed themselves to be in the railroad business rather than in the transportation business. The reason they defined their industry incorrectly was that they were railroad-oriented instead of transportation-oriented. They were product-oriented instead of customer-oriented. So as we go forward tonight with what you'll hear from our speakers and that, I want you to keep one thing in mind. From the Grand Vision, rail was part of an overall multimodal transportation solution. It was not a silver bullet. It belonged to what I like to refer to and others have referred to as silver buckshot. You have to approach things from a multitude of different directions. And from our unique perspective in the real estate realm, what we realize is location is important, but only if you have access. And we realize that from the last several decades, one of the largest market contributors to our real estate market up here has always been Southeast Michigan. But we've lost that connectivity in our transportation systems unless you're willing to get in a car and drive 4 or 5 hours to get up here and experience not only a vacation, but perhaps a second home or a vacation home. A train or a good, viable rail service changes that dynamic. And not only for Traverse City or Ann Arbor on the other end of the line, but for virtually every one of those communities that the train passes through on the way here, the communities that Hans talked about a little bit ago. It could be a real economic driver, and I like to refer to it as the umbilical that ties together the creative knowledge workers that we have in Traverse City to that manufacturing powerhouse that has always been Detroit. And if we can figure out a way to do that with some other network besides a virtual network, I think it could be a real boon for economic development in the state of Michigan. So tonight, we've got some really great speakers to talk to us about some interesting things that are going on in and around rail in Michigan. First, we have Tim Fisher, and he's the Chief Administrative Officer for M1 Rail, which is a consortium of businesses and civic institutions who are responsible for constructing a 3.3-mile long streetcar line in downtown Detroit. Tim's going to talk about how the M1 idea started and why a group of Detroit leaders thought rail was the next big thing for the Motor City. And what I like about Tim's story is he talks about the private sector jumping in with both feet and getting involved, because something like this can't happen on the backs of nonprofits or public sector. It has to be all three sectors. Private sector really has to get involved. We have John Hifche, serving from 2000 to 2014. John is the longest serving mayor of Ann Arbor. He was a leader of the Greenbelt campaign back in 2003 that resulted in over 4,000 acres of land being saved from suburban sprawl, with more to come. He has won several awards for his environmental work, among them the Conservation Leadership Award from the Greater Detroit Audubon Society for 2004, the Environmental Leadership Award for 2006, and the Michigan League of Conservation Voters, and the 2014 Leadership Award from the Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association. He led his city through the Great Recession without a tax increase. He launched the Wally Rail Project in 2006. John teaches at the University of Michigan now for the Ford School of Public Policy. And then we have Michael Benham. He is the strategic planner for the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority. He came to Ann Arbor in 2009 after working as the assistant director for the planning of for Metra, the commuter rail operator in Chicago, where he was responsible for building new rail lines. He'll give us an update on the Wally commuter rail project. And then Jim Bruckbauer. James, as I call him, and I have worked a lot on this rail project together. If there is a young person in our community who has invested themselves in a project that they hope will be there for the future, I can think of nobody who has done more than James. He's a policy special with the Michigan Land Use Institute, and James is going to talk about a new initiative to connect Traverse City to Ann Arbor by train. And I'm going to move on with one final thought for you. I came from Fort Wayne, Indiana 8 years ago. I am not a train guy, although I had a railroad caboose in my front yard for 10 years. I couldn't pass up the deal. Pennsylvania Railroad was a big part of Fort Wayne's history. The repair shops were there. Rail was a big part of Fort Wayne's history. The Pennsylvania Railroad stopped running service to Traverse City in 1949. They wouldn't go any further than Cadillac. What that tells me is that we have 3 full generations who have never known the experience of being able, as Hans so eloquently put it a little while ago, getting on a train and going somewhere and just enjoying the travel. The baby boomers, the Gen X, and the Gen Y have never had the opportunity to experience that travel, that type of travel, that mode of travel from Traverse City. Let's hope that Gen Z becomes the first generation to reignite the rail effort here in Traverse City. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the first of our speakers. So Tim, I will let you take it from here.
Thanks, Kim. Wow, Hans, 46, 47? I thought you were much older than that. No, I'm just kidding. No, happy birthday. It's great to be here. The last time I brought my family up here was a few years ago, and we actually took a train from Cadillac to just outside of Traverse City for the Michigan by Rail meeting, and my daughter just could not understand why we weren't taking the train up tonight. But perhaps, hopefully we will at some time again. My name is Tim Fisher. I am the Chief Administrative Officer with M1 Rail in Detroit. And again, it's great to be here. Thanks Hans and James and the team at MLUI for putting this on. Nicely done. M1 Rail, we're a nonprofit organization, and Kim said this, we're planned to construct and operate and then transfer the streetcar line in Detroit. That works. And we firmly believe that the streetcar line will ignite more opportunities for economic development and jobs and connect residents to multiple modes of transportation. And so that's part of the reason why I'm here. Wait, Detroit, what are we doing in Traverse City? And so transport it's about making connections, and that's what we intend to do at M1 Rail. We intend to make connections up and down the 3.3 mile corridor on Woodward Avenue, as well as to a commuter rail line that will operate between Ann Arbor and Detroit, and that commuter rail line will connect us from Ann Arbor to Traverse City. The state has invested a considerable amount of money in the rail system over the past few years, and we want to build on those investments and keep them going. I should note we also have M1 Rail. We have a station on Woodward Avenue that will connect to the Amtrak line that runs from Ann Arbor to Chicago, or from Detroit to Chicago, and also to Ann Arbor. Just a quick little thing. M1 Rail is the country's first mile of concrete road. It's a state road, state-owned road for the most part, and it's part of the trunk line system. And it's the street on which our cars will operate. They'll run with traffic in the traffic lanes, run about every seven minutes during peak times. And we expect to hit about 3 million riders or more within the first few years of operation. The streetcars are not new to Detroit. They've been operating on Detroit streets since about the 1860s. And about 100 years ago, the city had over 900 of them. And then we ripped them out. And about 60 years ago, the last ones, known as the Woodward Line, traveled up and down the corridor. And right now we are uncovering the tracks on which those streetcars traveled. And so you see them right here in the middle of the street. They paved over, just directly over the tracks, and so we are tearing up the old ones as we lay the new ones. And that's a picture of the new ones being installed this fall. Right downtown in front of my office, actually. So a little bit about these cars. Modern street cars will have 6 of them. They will be operated by a driver. They'll go forward and backward. They won't turn around. Level boarding, bike storage, wireless internet access. And at this point, my kids left. They didn't want to hear me talk very much, and so I was going to show a video. So if someone who's in control of the video could get that on, I'll let some of our donors and the big shots in our company explain a little bit about M1 Rail and why they got involved.
Detroit, more than any city, was built on transportation, founded on the river, birthplace of the automobile. And now, M1 Rail, a new engine of economic growth to propel the city forward that not only creates opportunity, but connects us to it.
A project like this is unique in the history of the United States. I mean, there's really never been an example where corporations came together with philanthropy, came together with government to take on a transit project like this. That doesn't happen without leadership. I mean, it doesn't happen without a shared vision. And a guy like Roger Penske is the kind of guy who can bring the community together, who can bring a bunch of disparate stakeholders together.
And that changes your whole type of environment for your city when you broaden the options of its residents. And also, I can see the M1 being a major attraction for our region.
We expect a lot more foot traffic and a lot more businesses to open because it'll be a booming area once again.
We went and looked at Portland and Minneapolis and Denver and San Diego, and in every one of those cities, the city fathers told us light rail that was curbside was the single dominating economic event that took their cities to the top.
It's benefiting the community because we're able to actually provide contract opportunities for local Detroit-based businesses, minority, women-owned based businesses. Our board from day one really was committed and wants this project to be committed to making sure that everyone is involved, and we've been able to do just that.
M1 Rail will serve everyone who lives, works, and plays in the heart of Detroit, now and in the future. But the connections will be even broader. It will tie directly to Amtrak, linking us to cities like Ann Arbor and Chicago. And it's just the start, the spark for a more connected future.
I wanted to intern for M1 Rail because I believe it was a significant, unique, and local project in Detroit. In the future, I could see myself living in Midtown or downtown Detroit, using the M1 Rail every day.
It's a hallmark to regional service and moving the ball forward to connect people even further. This is not just about fixed route, it's about paratransit services, helping elderly and disabled navigate, providing freedom for people. It helps advance everybody's opportunity forward.
In many ways, M1 is a down payment payment on the city's future. It's a down payment to a future that's denser and more walkable. It's a down payment to clusters of investment around stops. It's a down payment on better connections between people living and working in the core and being able to connect one to another. It's ultimately a down payment on a different aspiration, a different sense of hope, a different sense of trajectory about the city's future.
M1 Rail, moving forward together.
Okay. So that, if we could go back to the PowerPoint, and I'll kind of fly through some of these slides really quickly. Most of it, these guys in the video covered. A lot of what I have left is a kind of a picture show of construction photos. So I'm going to cruise through some of this. That's a typical base station. We'll have 20 of them along the route. Picture of our office. We're organized as a nonprofit organization. We have a whole variety of donors who have generously donated over $100 million to the project. Those are some of them, with Kresge putting in $50 million and some of these others putting in significance of money as well. Couldn't have done it. This is a true public-private partnership. We couldn't not have done it without these public sector partners as well. Clearly, they bring the expertise on all of these issues to bear. It's a little bit of the TOD stuff. We saw the Red Wings new stadium, Hopcat just opened, Carhartt store. All of these companies have opened along the Woodward Avenue corridor right near our tracks and have identified the M1 rail as why they're locating on the corridor as one of the factors, Tech Town. So we're under construction. Schedule, we should be done fall of 2016. Hopefully we'll carry passengers in the winter of 16. We have to go through a period of trials with the cars until we carry the first passengers, but that is our schedule, and we're on track at this point. And then this is really construction photos. I thought it'd be just good to put some of these in so people understand that this actually is a project. This isn't conceptual. We've moved from concept into reality, and it's fun to see some of these. The guys welding the rail, they weld them in 900-foot lengths. There's some of it. Actually, we're doing that right on the Red Wings stadium lot right now, and we have to drag them in, or they do, at night, 900 feet, right down Woodward Avenue, and place them. Utilities, we're putting in all new fiber optic cable throughout the corridor. The research facilities have identified broadband limitations as a factor for as a really a hindrance, and so we're putting all new fiber optics so they can expand their research capabilities. Businesses are remaining open, and we are trying to, the best that we can, drive people to the local businesses during construction, and sometimes it's a bit of a maze, but we're keeping the sidewalks open to the best that we can and routing people throughout the corridor. So that is that website there. Most of this information is at the website, Facebook, Twitter. That's it. Thanks.
I forgot to point out that we're going to do some Q&A afterwards, so if you've got questions for any of our panel up here, keep those in mind. When we get to the end of this, we'll have some Q&A. John Heifcha, the former mayor of Ann Arbor. Did I get it right that time? Very good. Very good. Excellent, John. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a pretty smooth drive up here. My class at the U of M ended at 2:30 today, and I was just benefited from clear weather. there aren't that many days lately that you can do that, that you can just buzz up to Traverse City. I have a special love for Traverse City. My family owned property here when I was a kid, and my mother and father retired here from 76 to 96, so I was here a lot and have made the drive several times. I wanted to tell you a little bit today about the Wally project, and let me take you back a few years. Back around 2004, the state came to this city and they made a proposal statewide that they were going to add new lanes to US 23 from Heartland all the way down to Ann Arbor. And if you've tried to drive into Ann Arbor in any particular morning down US 23, there's about an hour and a half there where it's pretty much a parking lot. And people are backed up sometimes 10, sometimes 15 miles trying to get into town. That's because there's a lot of jobs. There's 70,000 people a day drive into Ann Arbor from outside of the city to go to work. And they were going to, the state proposed these new lines at a cost of $500 million to put new lanes on. And we had the big question pop into our minds, well, what are we going to do with these cars when they get here? Where are we going to put them? Because we're pretty full of cars as it is. So as time rolled on, we decided that we needed to do something besides that and made a trip, myself and a couple staff members, up to Lansing, and we had a meeting with MDOT, and the guy who was the top rail person in the state came out, and he had a box and there's a bunch of big files and maps, and in that box they had a lot of maps and a lot of information. Let's see if I can take this out of here, about freight lines. The state didn't have a person that worked on passenger rail. Nobody. And we said, well, what's going on? And they said, well, we do Amtrak. We cooperate with them, and we have to pay some money for that, but they handle everything. So we kept pushing the issue, and not much happened. In 2006, we decided that we would give Great Lakes Central Railroad a call, and we'd actually been talking to them for a while, and we put together a train ride. And we invited people from politics, from federal and state, from local government, from the University of Michigan, from the business community, and we had 60 people turn up, and we took a wonderful train ride from Ann Arbor up into Livingston County. Actually, the first time that had happened in about 40 years that passengers had been on that rail line. And people were watching the cows go by through the fields, and they were going right by the cars that were waiting to get out of town, because getting out of town in the afternoon is a tough time, and that's when we planned our little train ride. And people began to think that, you know, this might be possible. And we heard from folks up in Howell about how much they wanted it. And of course, we had a lot of press on the train, and the press picked it up, because one of the things I talked about that day in 2006, a day in June, was, you know, the state owns this train line all the way into Traverse City. And the next day, the phone in my office began to ring off the hook. Folks from Traverse City were calling and saying, when's that train going to get here? And when can it happen? And my assistant at the time, and actually until I left office in 2014, was from Traverse City. And her family still lived up here, and her cousins were all calling. Her mom wanted to be on the train and come down and visit her. And all of those conversations were happening. People in politics in the state legislature in the Traverse City area were contacting our folks in politics and saying, how can we make this happen? And I think this is a little bit of a lesson, because it takes time. Now, we weren't launching Ann Arbor to Traverse City. We were launching Ann Arbor to Livingston County. And it was called the Wally Project, Washtenaw and Livingston. But I want to give you a message of hope here today, because that project is still alive. Despite what this state has been through, despite the Great Recession, if you go to Lansing today, there's a rail office. It has people there working on passenger rail. You've got M1 rail going up over in Detroit. You've got talk of commuter rail going on between Ann Arbor and Detroit. You've got Amtrak working on the tracks between Detroit and Chicago to get everybody up to a speed of 110 miles an hour, like they've been going from Kalamazoo to Niles now for almost 2 years. You've got money going into northern Indiana and southern Illinois to fix the tracks in that location, to get rid of the bind-up that happens when the freight trains are in your way. By about mid-2016, people will be going 110 miles an hour from Detroit to Chicago, in brand new rail cars with Wi-Fi, double deckers on nearly new tracks. Really cutting down the time it takes to go there. If you want to take a look around the state and see the interest, that's easy to do. You'll hear more about it tonight. You've heard some of it. Take a look at the generations that we have coming together. I don't know if you've followed the surveys, but millennials report over and over again in survey after survey that they don't want to be stuck in traffic. They don't want to commute. Many of them don't want to own a car. And the age of getting a driver's license is moving back and back, further and further and older and older. I can remember when I was 15, all I could think about was a driver's license. And my son, who is 33, doesn't really care if he has a car. If you take that automobile out of a young family's budget, you've put about $400 or $500 back into their pocket. But we still live in a state that for most parts of it, if you don't own an automobile, you can't get from here to there. If you're in Ann Arbor and you want to go to Traverse City, you can't get there without your automobile for most purposes. The baby boomers, and I'm one of them, I drove up here today. Am I still going to be driving up here when I'm 75 and the weather's a little iffy? I don't think so. Am I still going to want to sit in traffic, getting out of Ann Arbor and swelter on a hot summer day to get up here? I'm not so sure I want to be in that traffic that develops. Am I still going to do it when I'm older? I don't know. A few years ago, I was speaking at a rail conference. The governor was there, a lot of other good speakers. It was in Lansing. We had a great turnout. But what I saw at that conference wasn't so much what we said that was so important. It was who sponsored it. The Michigan Environmental Council, and I was really surprised, the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. So what I'm saying to you is rail has come mainstream now. You've got a governor who I believe is interested in rail and has backed that up at every stage. He went and got state funding to match the Amtrak money that came in. He continues to be in favor of what's going on in Detroit. And I can tell you a little plug right here. I go to Detroit about once a month, and there's something new and something has changed every time I go there. Detroit is on the comeback trail. I don't know if that word gets up here, but it's coming back. Talk about the politics for a minute. You've got folks down in Ann Arbor, pretty much a Democratic town. You got folks up here that I think is probably a little more mixed politically than it used to be, but still basically electing Republicans, and that's fine. I say that tongue-in-cheek because I know we have one of our excellent legislators here tonight. But what I'm saying is we've got to push from Ann Arbor to make this rail happen. And you've got to pull from Traverse City to make this rail happen. You've got people that can imagine the Ann Arbor Ski Club getting on a train and coming up to Traverse City, and the party starts when they leave town. It doesn't start when they get here. And by the way, we're going to exclude U of M fraternities from using the train. You got folks in Traverse City that could come down to Hill Auditorium and hear the Vienna Orchestra, or the San Francisco, or go to the Ark for the folk festival. There's year-round traffic of people that want to get from one place to another across our state, and all of those communities in between that want to take part in the economic development, something called a TOD, transit-oriented development, that takes place when you put in new rail. All of those little communities, large communities, medium-sized communities along this route that want to see this happen. I would tell you this. If you hearken back to another day, and my father, who was born in 1915, used to tell me about it. My grandfather worked on the train that went from Holland to Chicago. This is the best time for rail in over 100 years in our state. We have an opportunity now to go back to the past and bring something to the future that is being pursued by nations across this planet who have realized again, and some of them never gave up on it, that rail holds great promise to move not only freight, but humans from place to place. Now, this isn't going to be easy. It's going to take a while. The average rail project takes 10 to 12 years. That's the average. So some of them are 18 or 20 years. You've got to stick with it. It's going to need advocacy at every stage. It's going to need you all, the people in this room, to become engaged and stay engaged if this is ever going to happen. But I can guarantee you that there's another group of folks down in Ann Arbor. Again, they're going to be pushing to make this happen. If you all up in this area are pulling to make this happen, I think it's something that we can make happen. Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to hear from Michael Benham, who is the strategic planner for the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority, and he's going to talk to us about the Wally project and give us an update. Michael.
I love hearing about that Traverse City to Ann Arbor train, because to me it's the Ann Arbor to Traverse City train. I've cross-country skied over there in Acme, and it's great. I'd love nothing more than to get on that train and let the party start on the way up here and not after I get here. Okay, going to talk about North-South Commuter Rail, the other name for Wally. And just a little bit about this type of technology. You heard from Tim about the M1 project. It's considered a light rail technology. This is commuter rail. And talk a little bit about the equipment. First, the route. This is the first 26 miles of the Ann Arbor to Traverse City route. This uses the same tracks, the state-owned tracks from Ann Arbor going up into Howell. And as Mayor Hefja mentioned, this project has been going on for a while. I inherited this project about 2009, my luck, right when the recession was about to start. We didn't give up. We had other business in Ann Arbor, namely getting a transit millage passed. And by the time that was done, a federal grant had come through for a detailed feasibility study of this. So timing worked out pretty well, and we're starting to heat up this project again. Here's a picture of some of the actual cars that the state has been using. These are the refurbished rail cars, and you can see there's a different kind of technology from the M1 rail technology. This is railroad technology. Trains like this often run in freight territory. The cars are the stainless steel cars you see on the left, and they're hauled by diesel-powered locomotives, as you see in the upper right. They're typically crewed with a conductor, and they're accessible to people with disabilities. And the people sit in some very nice seats that make them smile. A little bit about the stations. This is an Amtrak station in New Buffalo, and it shows the style of station that you typically see in a suburban area. Not terribly intrusive. They consist of platform, lighting, shelter, and often become kind of the centerpiece of a community. As Kim mentioned, I worked for many years for Metro in Chicago, and these became, for many of the downtowns in the Chicago suburban areas, kind of the center of town. A little bit about recent improvements on the tracks. Most of the track from Ann Arbor to Howell is state-owned track, and it operates freight trains on a daily basis. Not so many that it would interfere with passenger service, but enough to warrant significant improvements over the past few years. So it's been a real benefit to the prospects for the Wally project. There have been significant track and crossing improvements. New siding was built, and some grade crossing protection added. So that begins to reduce the cost of the passenger service. Some other real significant developments. I mentioned the MDOT railcar refurbishment. This has been a huge boon for promoting rail in the state. People get on these cars and they go, ah, that's what we're talking about. Until they get on the cars and they look at them, then they understand what this service is all about. People who have been to Chicago, other large cities, or to Europe, they kind of get it. People who have never been there don't often get what the service is all about. So that's been a huge boon. We've had static displays all over southeast Michigan, and these cars actually saw their first revenue service in Howell this past summer at their Melon Fest event. In addition to that, these cars saw revenue service In November and December of last year, every weekend of those 2 months, these cars were hauled back and forth by the North Pole Express, and saw people paying to get on these cars and take a ride. We've also finished a station study down in Ann Arbor, so we know where that Wally station would be in downtown. And significantly, the Ann Arbor Railroad, the last 4.5 miles into Ann Arbor, is now has experienced a change in ownership. Where the Ann Arbor Railroad used to say, we're not interested in passenger service, they're now quite interested in talking to us. So that, along with developments like the Livingston Transportation Coalition, has really increased the prospects for the service. Mentioned a federal feasibility study that is now underway. We have both the Federal Highway Transit Administration as well as the Federal Transit Administration involved in this, and we're preparing the project for federal funding, which FTA tells us we've got a pretty good chance of. That will involve a great deal of public involvement. The importance of that public involvement is really clear from this slide. You see the green circle up there, the service program. That's the bricks and mortars, the engineering of this study. That's the easy part, quite frankly. If money were no object, if the political issues were no object, the service could be up and running in a very short period of time. But the three circles really need to come together. You need to have governance in place in order to answer the question, who's going to build this thing? Who's going to run this thing? And the associated politics, you can imagine how controversial or difficult that becomes. And then the last thing is funding. Everybody's interested in the service, but then when the issue of funding comes up, it's, okay, let's talk about this. So it takes some time. That's why these projects sometimes go for 10 or 12 or 15 years, because the community conversation has to take place in order for everybody to agree that, yes, we want this service. And that's why it's so important for you folks to be here today, is you are the evangelists, if you will, for this service. You're the folks who want this, who can talk to your local elected officials and help make this happen. A question I get a lot is, well, I'm not going to ride this thing, why should I support it? Here's why. There is study after study after study, and Tim made reference to this, about the impact on property values and the impact on the value of your community. And of course, the Land Institute is well aware of these things, but this is something I harp on all the time, that there are tremendous impacts on property value. So even if you never ever ride this thing, and I can't imagine why you wouldn't, there's still a benefit to you. This is a report I recommend taking a look at. It talked about how communities recently weathered the economic downturn, and the communities with rail did almost twice as well as the communities without rail in terms of maintaining their property values. So that's all I have. I welcome your questions, your inquiries. Please come down to Ann Arbor, even if you have to drive. And wish you the best of luck with the service to and from Ann Arbor. Thank you.
Jim, I'm going to slide this down in here because it's going to fall over. Jim will be up just a second, but I wanted to follow with something that Michael talked about for a minute. 7 years ago, the Realtor Association bought a couple of fellows to Traverse City to talk about the Rail Runner project out in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And those guys were really wonderful, and they really opened our eyes to the possibilities. But there were two things that I remember from their visit. Number one is they said doing a kind of a 30,000-foot flyover of Michigan, the state still owned many of the major rail corridors, and by golly, that was a real plus for us in ever trying to re-implement rail. If we didn't own them anymore as a state, we could probably never hope to see a viable rail system here. So that's one. Number two, I'm really excited about the refurbishment of those cars. because one of the problems that Rail Runner had was even if they had a 4-year time window, and even if they wanted to, they couldn't buy new rolling stock. They couldn't get the order in and get them manufactured that fast because the demand on the shops that build these things was so high. So they went out and found used rolling stock and refurbished it, and that was the big solution to their system. And I'm so pleased that that's what we've done here, is find that rolling stock and refurbish it, because I don't think it would be possible any other way. In today's marketplace, rail is really a hot commodity, and it's very difficult to try to get an order through. So with that, Jim, let's hear what MLUI is up to.
All right, thanks, Kim. So, as the former mayor said, Michigan is advancing passenger rail faster at a pace that we haven't seen since the 1800s, really over 100 years. And we just heard about a few of the projects, and this is exciting. You know, in 2011, the state created its first ever statewide passenger rail plan, and that was really a 30-year strategy for modernizing the state's railroad system. And the reason you're here tonight is to help us launch an initiative that will help us connect this region down to all those passenger rail projects downstate. Our goal, as Hans mentioned, is that within 10 years, we want to see some kind of passenger service between Traverse City and Ann Arbor. And a lot of people ask, so why Traverse City to Ann Arbor? And it was alluded to earlier, but there's a unique set of circumstances around this rail line. First of all, the tracks are still in place, and they're still owned by the Michigan Department of Transportation. And that's significant because back in the 70s and 80s, the state was looking at, how do we get rid of a lot of these rail lines that we weren't using very much? They were doing that in an effort to save a lot of money. And, if they didn't sell their line in the 90s, they were converting a lot of the rail lines to trails, as you see with the Cadillac to Grand Rapids line, and you probably noticed. But with this particular line, the state kept and maintained over the past couple decades, and that's significant because one of the biggest costs when you take on a transportation project like this would be purchasing the land and putting down the tracks. Right now they're still there, they're still in place, and the state is still maintaining that line. And the tracks are still in pretty good shape. About 90% of the tracks are ready for passenger service. 65% of the tracks between Traverse City and Ann Arbor can carry passengers right now at 59 miles per hour. Right now they're being used for freight service. We're shipping sand, wood products, plastic products in and out of northern Michigan, all over the country. But as I said, 90% of the tracks are already in good enough condition for passenger service, and there's just about 10% where there needs some significant investment, and we hope that we can accomplish that over the next 10 years. Third point, Great Lakes Central is the company that's leasing the tracks right now from the Michigan Department of Transportation. And that's significant because they are one of the only freight railroad companies in the entire country that's interested in passenger rail. And as was mentioned earlier, they're the company that has a whole division that's set aside for refurbishing passenger cars. So that's significant that we have this unique opportunity with this company. And last, and it's not really specific to this line, but it's specific to this project overall, there's an overwhelming amount of enthusiasm and energy around this. There's just so much excitement about being able to travel between these two communities. During a statewide rail planning process back in 2011, communities were asked all over the state, what do you want to see with passenger rail? And that was the Michigan by Rail forums that Tim had mentioned earlier. And the number one priority that came out of that process was people wanted to see a rail connection to Traverse City. They didn't want to see, I think Detroit and Chicago came up like second or third, but the number one priority was people wanted to see that connection to Traverse City. And more people attended the Traverse City meeting than anywhere else around the state. So I thought that was very significant. We did take the train up, and that was great. So those reasons really make this project worth exploring. So why does MLUI care? Well, we feel that this type of train service would have a major impact not only on Michigan's overall economic recovery, but on a lot of these towns that are in between Traverse City and Ann Arbor. And it was already mentioned earlier. Towns like Kingsley, Cadillac, Owasso, Elma. I mean, they have a lot to gain from this type of service. A 2009 Grand Valley State University study showed that the Michigan towns that had passenger rail service saw an extra economic boost in their downtowns by about $7 million to $45 million a year. And that was even the cities that had just once a day train service. So we feel that this could really be a boost to a lot of these downtowns. We also feel, as mentioned before, it would be attractive for a lot of young people and millennials. A Rockefeller Foundation study conducted last year showed that 86% of millennials want to live in a place where there's public transportation, including rail. And we think that that's significant because they'll be looking into Michigan and looking at a lot of these communities if there is that proper public transportation and including rail. And we just think it would be another good option for Michigan travelers. Not only does it connect people downstate who want to come up and vacation, but this would be really a way for people who live in a lot of these downtowns along the way to be able to have access to not only Traverse City, but other major metropolitan areas. It would be great to be able to jump on that train right at the depot and be able to connect from downtown to downtown. But it's going to require a lot of work, and it's going to require a lot of help from everyone. We have a 10-year timeline right here, which includes a lot of these technical studies that need to be conducted in order to make regular passenger service a reality. The first one is a preliminary feasibility study, and that's going to answer a lot of the questions that are out there, like, how much would something like this cost? Who's actually going to ride this thing? What are some of those funding sources that are out there that could help a project like this? And what kind of operating structure would this need? Would it be a nonprofit? Would it be Amtrak? Would it be a for-profit company that could run this thing? That preliminary feasibility study will answer a lot of those questions. And then the next stage is this environmental review and analysis phase, which takes a few years, and then the engineering and construction work could begin after those studies are completed. But as Hans mentioned, none of this happens without a lot of that grassroots support from the community, not only here, but also the communities along the way. So over the next 3 years, we want to begin our campaign where we begin working with journalists and videographers to really show and tell the story about what impact this could have on a lot of these communities. We really want to tell the stories of the people who live in these communities that this could have an impact on, and really lay that groundwork for community support. We're also in beginning talks of operating some excursion trains and running excursion trains for various events, both in mid-Michigan and up in Traverse City over the next few years. So we'll keep you posted on all that. But really, we want to create this campaign, channel all this enthusiasm into some kind of tool or apparatus that can build leadership from elected officials and the legislature to really help us identify the funding sources and the resources that MDOT needs to really make this happen. So without a campaign, this doesn't happen. So we need your help. We have 3 immediate things that you can do. The first one is just sign up to get updates on all of this. We're creating a website right now and a Facebook page, but where you can get updates there. But sign up in the back. There was those sheets that may be going around too here in the question and answer session, where you can put your contact information and we'll be able to give you updates that way. We want to hear your questions and comments and ideas about this. We're going to have a question and answer session here in a minute, but we're not going to get to everybody's questions, but we really want to hear your questions. So feel free to email me or email any way you can get to contact with anyone at MLUI. And we really want to hear your comments and concerns or any ideas that you have for this. And then, I don't know if Michael mentioned earlier, but right now the legislature is trying to decide whether or not to continue Michigan's lease with these commuter cars that are hopefully going to be used here in a couple of years on the Wally line. So you'll see a sheet in the back that's kind of a call to action. If we hope that you consider contacting your local state representative to let them know that you do think passenger rail should continue to be explored in Michigan and that we should continue to lease these cars. So that's all I have. So should we go into some of this question and answer, Kim? And you want to moderate that? So, sure. Great.
Okay, so we've got a couple of people with microphones, I think, down here on the floor that can get to you if you'll raise your hand with a question for our panel. And can we bring those lights down just a skosh, because it's real hard for me to see anybody out there at a mic.
Got a question right here, Mark.
All right.
Are there any states that have some progressive legislative inaction or any policy? You know, who should we look to see good examples of public support for rail?
Okay, John, you want to take over?
I think that's a really excellent question. One of the places that you might look is in Oregon. Really some spectacular legislation that enabled Portland to be what it is. And in Portland, as they expand rail, as they put in each new train stop, they see millions of dollars of new investment coming in around those stops. So it's a very good example of transit-oriented development. But there are states across the country that are working on rail. In Denver, they're working on branching out rail. They're working on rail in Arizona. They're working on rail basically across the country and along with Amtrak, not every state certainly, but along with Amtrak enhancements. So there are lots of places, there's lots of examples, and that's one of the areas that we can look at for funding examples too, and an organization. So it's not like writing the book ourselves. There's places where we can go where they're already working on the chapters.
I just point out real quickly, Nashville City Star has got a rail program. It's their version of Wally, and it's about the same scale as the Wally project. So that's a good one to look at. Some people say, well, rail, you know, it's good for New York or it's good for Chicago or Boston, but it's not. It's being used in smaller cities all over the U.S.
And I might recommend that you go out and take a look at New Mexico's rail runner system, because that track was a freight-only track for a number of years. Well, actually, for about 100 years. And they only ran 2 freights a day on it until the rail runner came along. And the guys that put that project together told me, you know, for 4 years they were working on it, all these people that were naysayers about it. But as soon as rail runner launched and it was wildly popular, everybody wanted to claim credit for it, which it doesn't sound unusual, but people actually come out on their back decks and wave at you as you go by on the rail runner. It's amazing. And then I think you look at California, what they're doing. Florida's got some big rail projects going on right now. I think there's just a lot of rail activity going on in the country if you go out and take a look at it. We need to be there. It's an area we need to get into. Do I have another question out there?
Right here. I'll hold it.
If I could explain just 2 questions right here. I'm born and raised in the area right here. My name is Carl Malarch. I actually had a wonderful opportunity, thanks to the Rotary Club here in 1987, to actually visit Finland as an exchange student. One of the things I've seen over the last 20 years within the development of that country is they went from World War II to basically this modern era. And I've seen the public transport that has transported with the will of and backing of the people. It didn't take as long as you're actually saying right there, which I understand. We have national politics and whatnot. But I would like you to explain to the other people throughout our state the benefits that we've seen throughout other countries that is bring about the public transport, the less need for personal transport. When we have rapid public transport, the fuel cost comes down, the economics comes up, people living in their local neighborhoods and everything else, it's fantastic. However, it does take the back and the will of the people.
I don't know if I caught a question in there, but any of you traveled abroad that you can speak to that? Sounds good to you? Okay, all right. Yeah, another project that I think it's coming online in 2016 is the Denver has got a light rail system that they're putting in that's going to go out to the airport. And if any of you have ever flown into Denver, I think the airport's in the next state. because it takes you forever to get to downtown Denver. And I said, boy, wouldn't this be a great place to put a light rail system and get out to the airport? And as we approach the airport, here's this huge billboard that says 2016 light rail coming to Denver, Stapleton Airport. So there's another example.
You know, one challenge that we have here in the state is the safety standards and safety requirements that need to be put in place when we're creating a rail project. Every time there's an accident between a train and a car anywhere in the country, then the cost and the length of time it takes to start a rail project just increases. We heard that from the Michigan Department of Transportation in Great Lakes Central. So that's one of the reasons why I think here in the U.S., because of our safety standards, which are important, that sometimes these projects can take a little bit longer.
We have a question over here. Okay, we're ready. I want to thank you for coming tonight and bringing this message to us. I noticed the rails go up to Petoskey. Do you have any idea how those folks feel about this and whether they're pulling for it as much as we will?
Yeah, so we don't have the map up, but the entire stretch of tracks between Fife Lake and Petoskey, it may be even Cadillac and Petoskey, is rated at that service where you can carry passengers on trains. In fact, the Steam Railroading Institute this past fall operated an excursion train from Petoskey to Fife Lake. And there's a lot of excitement and enthusiasm up there, I would say, because that train sold out. People paid over $100 a ticket just on one fall excursion train. I forgot how many, a couple hundred people I think were on the train. And so there was a lot of real enthusiasm. I mean, they could have charged a couple $100s for tickets, I believe, and it still would have sold out. I mean, there was a waiting list for people to get on it. So we do see the excitement on there. Tim, when you did the Michigan by Rail forums, were Petoskey people part of that, or did you go up to that section of the state?
No, Traverse City is where.
Okay. So I would say there's a lot of excitement there.
Jim, explain the difference between excursion rail and priorities and then regular passenger rail.
So regular passenger service would be service that runs on a schedule, like a fixed schedule, so daily or even 3 or 4 times a day. An excursion train is kind of a one-off special event type service, which happens around the state quite often, actually, and it's that organization that I mentioned, the Steam Railroading Institute, who works with the Michigan Department of Transportation and Great Lakes Central on running these excursion trains for special events.
And each one of them require a different level of track quality, as I understand it. Jim, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, and that's part of those safety requirements that the Federal Railroad Administration sets for different tracks. So there are different levels, probably 3 or 4 different levels, and depending on the condition of the track, that determines the speed at which the trains can travel.
So there are a lot of different factors, and when you hear people talk rail, you've heard about M1, you've heard about Wally. Wally runs on what is considered to be standard gauge railroad using standard railroad rolling stock. Light rail would be something different, and then there are some other rail systems, maglev and things like that, that run on something completely different. But what we're talking about here is utilizing infrastructure that we already have, using standard rolling stock that's been refurbished, similar to what we talked about with the Wally project and the double-decker cars that you saw in the slides. We're not talking about reinventing anything here, and this is really the most cost-effective way to return rail service here. But passenger rail only survives if we've got good freight capacity too, and so there's a real push to look at what the freight component looks like before we can get into real serious discussions about what passenger rail could look like, because it's the freight that helps offset that cost. But there are people that are working on that, and I know that you said Senator Schmidt was here earlier. I don't know if he's still here, but learned a lot from him on this as he was coming through the State House. I've talked to him a lot and everything. He's been very informed, very helpful with helping us understand what we have to do here. So do we have any other questions?
Yes, we do. Yeah,
Yeah.
right here. One more time.
I'm 10 years old, and I'm called Train Boy, and I love trains. And and I have enjoyed every moment of this.
Well, good.
Great.
Okay, great. We hope by the time you're 20 years old, you'll be able to take a train down to Southeast Michigan and go watch a game or a show or something like that, and then connect to the high-speed rail and go anywhere in this country you want to go.
All right, we have another question over here.
Thanks very much for bringing your message tonight. Back during one of the presentations, there was a slide on the big money donors. I didn't see any automotive company names on there. A lot of this discussion, I would think, in their strategic planning meetings would be rather scary. What kind of pushback are you seeing, or do you anticipate? How does all that work out?
Yeah, none whatsoever. They were on there. Ford, GM, and Chrysler have both each put in $3 million to the streetcar line. They're very supportive. We've worked with them, depending on the company from the very beginning. They were supportive and see the benefits of the streetcar to economic development and a better quality of life in the city. So in terms of their strategic, internal strategic discussions, I'm not in those, but in terms of their investment into the streetcar line, they have been very supportive.
My experience has been very similar to Tim's. I sat next to Bill Ford Jr. a couple of years ago at a luncheon, and we talked extensively about rail, and they had no problem with rail. They see it as a quality of life issue. They know people are still going to buy automobiles and trucks, and I know that from talking to Bill that there was no real fear of anything that was going to happen with rail. It's not like it was back when Henry Ford was out there tearing up the tracks. It's a different scenario now, and they recognize that they can move their people, their working people, their executives back and forth with rail. It's just another transportation tool.
Yeah, I should also mention that Roger Penske is chairman of my board. Car guy, and Penske trucks are all over the highways, and he is a very strong supporter. So.
Well, I think another point that we need to look at is GM is probably one of the largest producers of the electromotive diesels that are currently being used out there in rail service. There's a lot of big money coming back into rail. Warren Buffett, as you all know, bought himself a railroad because he just thought it was a good idea to invest in one. A lot of people stood up and paid attention to that. But I think what's really unique and what I'm excited about for Michigan is I come from an old tool and die background. That's really where I come from, was manufacturing. And a spindle doesn't know the difference between an automotive part, an aviation part, or a railroad part. And we have more manufacturing potential in this state than any place else, I would venture to say, on the planet. And if rail comes back, I can't help but think that Michigan can become an epicenter of manufacturing for all of this rolling stock and all the other technology that are going to go into rail. And let's understand, we're talking about rail of the future, not rail that you remember from up here back at the turn of the last century. This is all very high-tech stuff. If you get in a new electromotive diesel right now and look at the tech that's going on in there, you'd be amazed. The railroads have really transformed, and they'll transform even more. And this is why I think investors are really looking at rail. And I know from a real estate standpoint, and it was mentioned earlier, Michael and John both mentioned it, the National Association has done some pretty deep studies about what happens to properties around rail stops or transit centers or whatever. And it is boosting the economy of a lot of areas to be building and locating people around those transit stops, because quite frankly, that's what the consumer wants. And if you remember what I read to you about Theodore Levitt, that's where the railroads weren't paying attention. They weren't paying attention to what the consumer wants. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're listening to people say this is something we want. Okay, let's figure out how to get there. So who else do we have out here?
We've got some more questions.
Last question, I'm told.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yep.
okay.
My friend Andy and I are here all the way from Alberta, which in Benzie County, which used to have rail, Ann Arbor Railroad. I did an informal Facebook poll today, just my friends, and in 2 hours I had 30 people say they would definitely take a train from Ann Arbor to Traverse City, vice versa, at least twice a year. I had 7 people say they would do it twice a month. So I'm just wondering, and that's in Benzie County, so they would drive to Traverse City or however. So what I'm wondering is, I know you have to do a feasibility study, but you must have some idea of what it would take, how many people, how often, for it to be viable at all. I mean, what are we looking at?
I really wish we could answer that. We don't know, and that's what this feasibility study has to do. I mean, we could guess. MDOT actually suggested that you could take a look at a certain percentage of car traffic that's traveling between the two communities and estimate based on that, but it's really going to take a more thorough analysis, and that's what this feasibility study would do. But hopefully we can get that done here in the next couple of years so that we can figure that out, and that would really tell us, who would ride this in a lot of these communities, and how much would you have to charge to ride it, and who would ride it based on the certain amount that you charge. A lot of those questions would have to be evaluated by someone a lot smarter than us.
I would just caution against the notion. A lot of people ask, well, why don't these services pay for themselves? They do, but not necessarily in the sense of every dollar of operating cost is covered by passenger fares. Typically, these services run anywhere from 20% to 70% of their costs of service are coming out of the fare box. This compares pretty favorably to highways, which cover about 50% of their cost through user fees.
That's a very good question. There's really no way to tell until the study's done, but anecdotally, I can tell you, my wife and I were talking about this just last night, and we know so many people that come to Traverse City on a regular basis. Many of them have a vacation home here, or they come up here to the same resorts over and over again, or they come up 6 times during the winter to go skiing. I would guess that coming out of Ann Arbor on a Friday afternoon, you'd have hundreds of people on that train just about any time of the year, whether it's coming up for the color tour. Ann Arbor's a very walkable, bikeable place. People can bring their bikes along. There's ways to do that and come up here, and you have the same kind of thing going on up here. And I would guess that there's a whole lot of people in Traverse City, again, hundreds a weekend, that might want to go down to Southeast Michigan and see what's going on down there too. Rail makes it as if you're next door to another community because you don't have the hassle of a drive. It's not nearly as tiring. Again, that your relaxed time starts when you get on the train. It's quite a different experience.
Quick add, one thing that we hope to do over the next few years is expand the number of potential excursion trains that we could run, and that way we could demonstrate, how many people are we selling tickets to, and what the demand is for some of these excursion trains, and just expand it. I had it in 2020. We hope to be able to expand that to just regular weekend service, and then once we build up some of that demand and interest there, expand it again to, more frequently during the week.
And I just want to say it's going to take a lot more conversations like this, but this one wouldn't have happened without MLUI stepping up and making it happen. So I thank MLUI a lot.
That's nice. Thank you, Kim. So we would love to keep the conversation going, and we will keep this conversation going. I encourage you all to sign up on those clipboards because we have lots of mailing lists and people that are connected to the Michigan Land Use Institute, but we're going to keep a special list of folks who are motivated to be rail advocates and communicate regularly with you. If you have questions that you weren't able to ask tonight, send them by email. We're going to post the questions and our answers online. We've had this event videotaped, so we'll put this online. So if you want to motivate your friends and neighbors in Alberta or Kingsley or Cadillac or wherever you're connected to, you'll be able to get the word out about this content that you've heard tonight. I don't know about you guys, but I'm really proud of the state of Michigan when I hear the stories out of Detroit, Ann Arbor, and Livingston County. I think we're really lucky to have this kind of leadership in our state and have them up here as our guests to talk about what's possible. I mean, as the photos showed, the ground is being broken and the tracks are going in the city of Detroit in Woodward Avenue, and I think that is an extraordinary achievement for all of Michigan. And what John and Michael described is about 8 years ago, they launched a campaign when they looked at traffic on US 23, and if things stay on course, they may be delivering that service in a 10-year period of time. And that gives us a lot of hope that it's possible because it's the same tracks, just like John said, it's pushing from Traverse City and pulling from Ann Arbor, and that's exactly what gives us some real confidence. So I want to just take a minute to thank Tim, Michael, and John for coming up from downstate and really inspiring what's possible for our region. I also want to thank Kim Pontius, because I heard earlier today, Kim's not feeling well. I don't know if he's going to be able to do it. He wanted me to step in, but I could never step in for Kim Pontius. This guy is a rail enthusiast who gets the big picture, and the Traverse Area Association of Realtors in our community is really lucky to have a visionary leader like Kim Pontius in this community. So give it up for Kim and the Realtors Association. Not to go on and on about the Michigan Land Use Institute, but we're a staff of 14 people doing the best we can on local food, clean energy, thriving communities, and modern transportation. And one of our brightest stars is Jim Brookbauer, who put all the pieces in this event together and will carry forward this campaign for a long time. So, a little bit of urgency here, and we didn't really directly hit this the way I'd like to right now, but right now the State House Transportation Committee is scrutinizing the rail program. Okay, those cars that MDOT is refurbishing in partnership with Great Lakes Central are an important investment, and legislators are wondering if that investment's worth it, if Michigan should stand behind and put our dollars behind the rail possibilities, and starting with Ann Arbor to Howell and up to our region. Those are the very same cars that will come to Traverse City. So I can tell you that MDOT wants to expand rail service. They have a strong program, they have a statewide plan, and they want to study the feasibility of connecting Ann Arbor to Traverse City, but they need to hear from us. MDOT needs to hear that this region, the state of Michigan, supports rail, and Senator Schmidt needs to hear that we appreciate his leadership. And your legislator, if you're from a different district, and the chair of the House Transportation Committee, all that information is on our website right now. We just put it up during this event and on a printout back there. So if you're motivated, sitting around and going, isn't that a good idea, isn't enough. It really isn't. We need you to say, I'm going to go home tonight and I'm going to write a letter to my legislator and to the chair of that House committee and say, we really want rail. If they hear that from 100 people from Traverse City, it'll impact the dialogue. It'll make this more likely. These moments in this journey are important, and we're at a very important one right now. So stay connected with us and be an activist. Be an activist, and the great thing about this, as John said, it's a political campaign without politics. It's about bringing the state of Michigan together. It doesn't matter who you're voting for, where you live, how much money you make. This is about a viable option for moving around the state that is good for the environment, good for the economy, and good for people. So please, let your voice be heard. And it's really about getting your voice out, and it's about supporting our organization's effort to launch a campaign, partnering with business, with government, and making it happen, and having a belief that it's possible. And we believe it's possible, and it's going to be possible when you get your voice out there and you stay connected to this opportunity. So you all are crucial, and thank you for coming out tonight. Strangers on a Train will hit in about 8 minutes for free here at the State Theater. Stay connected with the Michigan Land Use Institute. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.